time out to meet with me this evening. I appreciate it. It's, hey, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. That's great. And let me make sure I say your names correctly. Asata,
Asata, yes.
Asata, and
Salama.
Salama. Okay. All right. Thank you. Yep. And so where do you folks live?
We're not far. We're in Woodbury, which is
Okay.
basically Deptford
Yeah.
Township.
Yep. And I'm on Kings High. I mean, not Kings Highway. I'm off Kings Highway, but I'm on Berkeley Road in Mount Royal.
Okay.
Yeah. It's about a half mile down from the Mount Royal Inn
Okay.
down there. Yeah.
How long have you been there?
Well, actually, I've been here for 20 years myself, but my grandfather bought a 70-acre colonial farm back in 1929 on Berkeley Road, and the home was built in like in the early 1700s, and that's where my dad grew up. And when I was a kid, I actually grew up in Brookline, but I had I had all my fun here. This is where my dirt bike was, and I had a horse, and I had all my friends from Kingsway High School. So this is where I hung out. But I grew up in Brookline, so it's been in the family for almost 100 years now. But the farm was sold off. It's now in development. The 17th century house, somebody bought it and restored it, but I got the last 2 acres, which goes down into a stream area, and my wife and I made it into a retreat area. So the house is like a retreat house with an outside where people can be in the woods and be near the stream, and it's kind of cool. It's very you feel like you're in the Poconos actually. Yeah, so yeah, and now and your churches. I've been in your church once or twice over the years. I used to live in Westville before I lived here, and I can remember them clearing it for your church.
Yes.
It's an amazing place what you built there.
We've actually been part of Victory for 12 years now. We were in the old building before they transitioned to the new building. And now we live 4 minutes away. So we're right behind where the old church was.
Oh, really? Oh, cool.
In that area.
Yeah, and I've known Tanya. I don't know if you got a chance to share with you as far as how we met or how long ago or whatever. But I've known Tanya since I'd say the late 80s, maybe early 90s.
Okay.
And I know your church is very powerful, and they are all about empowering people to do God's will. That's right. The impression I've always gotten from the church. And what kind of work do you folks do?
We're both in social work, but I was in education. She's been in social work for like almost 20, I don't know how long.
So I work in social services for 23 years. We also have a background in teaching as well as real estate. So we've been licensed realtors for the past 8 years. So we work with buyers and sellers and helping them to be able to secure housing that's going to be reasonable for them. Their families are going to be able to thrive. Also work with investors who are looking to be able to utilize real estate in order to be able to get the financial freedom and wealth that they're looking for.
That's really neat. And social work, that's great. So Asata, you went from education. What were you teaching? Grade school, or were you teaching? Like, what were you?
I was in middle school. I was a one-on-one professional. I worked in special education. So I just transitioned out in May of this year. Thinking about going back later. Just it's a lot of struggle to get to break the bridge, so to speak, with the transition with the parents and getting the help their children need. One of the reasons I left was, I knew I was effective because I could tell. I just got like 4 texts the other day because school started up. I taught in Camden City, and I was at Morgan Village Middle School, and my other colleagues are just like, these kids miss you so much. Or they're asking, like, are you really not coming back? And it was just trying to get to the root of the problem. It was very frustrating because I look at how a lot of the parents, they don't utilize the services that are offered, and the ones that utilize the services, they're doing it. Unfortunately, whenever a child is labeled as having a learning disability or such, they receive SSI. And I've had parents where students have tested out of special education, and they're like trying to find a way to put them back in because all they wanted was to check. They're not worried about, their children thriving, and it's a cycle. So I kind of wanted to see, dealing with social services, and I'm actually in Monmouth County, which is the second most affluent county in New Jersey. They have the same
You're
program.
Monmouth County, you're up.
Yeah, I go to Monmouth County every day to work. So
get out of here. So that's where you're working now, and is Monmouth County?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
So but I'm learning a lot. I'm looking at how looking at I even review a lot of the school stuff up there because that county, they're very closely involved with everything from education. A lot of the families that are utilizing social services, their kids, when you interview, you talk to them, they're in the same situation, but they're utilizing what Monmouth County is offering them.
Right. They're not just taking the money and
right.
the kid flounder.
Right. And it's not in the Camden City, they always think of it as being the socioeconomic status. Inner city schools get so much federal funding. They have the money. They're just not utilizing it. And I'm trying, but when it comes down to the root of it, what I'm seeing, the problem starts with the parents. You have parents that want to be vested in their child's education, their future, and you have parents that don't. And that's probably because it's the cycle that they were in. So it's probably generational. And, we're looking to try to break that. And that's one of the things that we're doing. Salama, we're venturing forth into a new, I guess this is a new business journey. I'll let Salama explain it more. So she came up with the acronym for it.
So basically, we're definitely looking to be able to empower young people. That's who we are. That's what we're all about. We've seen what the journey looks like when you don't have a strong foundation, when you don't have the educational tools, you don't have the parental support, or your parents may not have the knowledge to be able to teach you how to be able to be successful, how to be able to go from A to Z, be able to set up those goals and the structure and everything that you need in order to be able to achieve success. We've had our own struggles in life. Asata and I, we've been married 33 years this month.
Oh, get out of here. 33 years? I would have thought you were 33 years old.
Exactly. So we married extremely young. I was in high school when we married. And we started our family very early in life. And so therein was a bunch of struggle. We struggled with knowing how to be husband and wife. We struggled with how to manage our household, how to manage our finances. So there was a lot of different barriers that we had to overcome in order to get to even this level where we're at right now. And of course, we're very goal oriented. So we're always looking to hit the next mark, hit the next target. So there's always room to grow. And now we've learned how to be able to create that framework, the system, the structure in order to be able to do those things. And so that's what we're relying on. We're relying on different systems and processes. And those are things that we're looking to educate people on in order for them to have a measure of success, whether or not that means financial independence for themselves and their family, or if that just means, having that sense of security, that comfort, knowing that all your bills are going to get paid on time, you're going to be able to manage your finances, you can budget effectively, those type of things. Those are all some of the things that we've been managing through ourselves, and we want to be able to help other people to be able to do the same.
Wow, that's great. You know, that's wonderful. You know, it's you know, I want to share with you as far as what my wife and I are doing, and as far as our journey. You know, we'll be married 39 years in October, and we met in '82. And again, I can't believe that you guys are only right behind us, because I feel like I'm an old guy and you're a young couple. You know, so that's amazing. You know, it's but if you would give me just 1 minute, because I forgot to get something to drink, and
Okay.
I need to get a bottle of water or something.
Okay,
Okay,
fine.
all right, I'll be back in a moment.
Okay.
I actually thought his wife was going to join in. I wonder where she's at. He's old. And mind you, I saw that he started his business in '85. So I guess he would be a kind of old. What was it?
Okay.
Mhm.
Sorry about that. It's,
Okay.
but anyway, yeah, you know, first of all, I'm finding it. You're like the third person this in the past 2 days that I just feel that it's like God's bringing everyone together, you know, for something special. Yeah, and to hear your background and to hear what you folks are about, you know, is so inspiring. And I'll share with you as far as, you know, I'm launching this worldwide program that is scalable, called achievementdynamics.com. If you've been to the website and checked it out at all yet, have you had a chance to look at the website at all?
I actually
Yeah.
did a little bit, yes.
Okay, and so let me give you some background. In fact, how I even became friends with Tanya back in the '80s, because she was a client back in the '80s. I started my company in 1985 called Achievement Dynamics Institute, and how that all began was back when I mentioned that I grew up in Brooklyn, but this was the family farm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I was 12 years old, all right, this I can tell you exactly the moment that my journey began, because I'm 12 years old and I decided that I wanted a dirt bike, you know, to ride on this farm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that what kid wouldn't, right?
Right.
You know, a dirt bike and be able to. And so the one I picked out was at a Yamaha dealership in Mount Ephraim, and that was no longer there. And it was $400, $429. Now this is 1969 when you bought a brand new Maverick for 1974, right? For $2,000, you got a brand new car, right? So $400 was a lot of money, right? So my dad thought he had the perfect answer, because he knew I bugged the heck out of him about this thing, right? So he said, I said, Dad, can I have a dirt bike? And his answer was, sure, you can have a dirt bike. Just buy it yourself, right? And I heard yes. I didn't hear no. I heard yes. I just got to figure out how to buy it myself. And it took me 2 years, and I saved and I worked everywhere I could, delivering papers, whatever I could do. And I got $400. He gave me the last $29. And we bought this, and I bought this dirt bike, and I was just so excited. In fact, the first 2 nights, all I did was sleep next to it. I was just so happy. And I returned to the farm, and now I'm riding this dirt bike. I can't get off it. You know, I'm just riding it every day. And I meet the kids from Kingsway High School, and they're all farm boys. You know, they got dirt bikes, but they have horses too, right? And we had a barn with an old farm horse. And so at 15, I decided that I wanted to buy a horse, right? So by the time I was 15 years old, I was going to Cowtown, and I was shopping for horses, and I come into the barn one day, and the workhorse my uncle had a baby, So suddenly I had a horse. And I
Mm.
always say, achievements and blessings. You never know when it's your achievement or God's blessings, right? So I had my dirt bike and my horse. And then down the down the road was Pittman Airport. And when I was a kid, my dad flew airplanes, and you could get your pilot's license at 16 years old. So I got a job making $18 a week, giving out change in a laundromat, and it cost me $10 an hour for the plane. It was a 1947 J3 Cub, and $7 an hour for the instructor. And I would take a lesson a week. And when I was 16 years old, I soloed. So now I had a dirt bike, a horse, and a pilot's license.
Wow.
When I was 16 years old, right? So goal setting became something that was a passion of mine, and it was about getting what I wanted and knowing that I had this power, right? So really, I was empowered, and when you want, and it's really about quality of life. When you're a kid, this kind of stuff's the quality of your life, right? And then when you get older, other things are the quality of your life. So I'm moving forward in my life, and now I'm over. I'm going to high school, and then they ask you what you want to do when you graduate, and I said I want to be a commercial pilot, and they look, and I only wanted to get C's because anything more than C, I was putting too much work into high school, and I couldn't have enough time to play. So every class was, what do I got to do to get a C in this class, right? So the dude goes, you can't be a commercial pilot. You don't have the math. You got to get an A in math to be a commercial pilot. Forget it. So he knocked that off my list, right? And I said, well, then I want to be a veterinarian. And he says, you can't be a veterinarian. You don't have the science. You got to get an A in science if you want to be a veterinarian. He goes, you're not college material, right? And he gets me a job where I worked. I went to school till 12 o'clock, and then I made caulk on the waterfront in a factory at Gloucester City, and everybody in the company made caulk, right? And everybody walked around covered in smelly, gasoline-smelling caulk, right? And they had 5-year pins and 10-year pins, and I'm thinking, I'm a dead man. I can't do this the rest of my life, right?
Yeah.
So when I got out of high school, I decided that I was going to be a stand-up comedian, right? and so I figured that's a fun career. So there was no place for me to perform, so I started my own comedy club. And while I was in Barrington, and it wasn't the club itself; it was one night a week at a place called the Crazy Horse Saloon. While I was going there, and I had to stop stuttering, so I learned how not to stutter. I taught myself that. I went to Camden County College, ended up on the dean's list, and then at 20 years old, I became a Big Brother in the Big Brother organization. And because my dad was always a great dad, he always supported me and my brother and as far as taking us places. So I figured I'll be a Big Brother and I can give back. So my little brother was 10 years old. He's 57 years old now. And I taught him how to fly. He spent 25 years in the Air Force. And yeah, so now I'm doing this thing with my Big Brother thing. I'm doing the goal setting thing. I'm doing the comedy thing, and I meet my wife. All right, in 1982. Now, she had the opposite experience in high school. She grew up in West Deptford, and when she was 12, 13 years old, she joined a group of kids that they called themselves the gang, right? And guess what the gang did? Didn't go to school. The gang was all about screw authority, right? We don't go to school, and our parents don't, we just do everything we can not to go to school or listen to our parents, right? And that was the gang that she joined, right?
Wow.
And so by the time she was 15, 16 years old, she was estranged from her parents. No one even knew. They couldn't talk to her. She was on her 16th birthday, she quit school. The leader of the gang was 19 years old. She married. He ends up joining the Navy. She ends up marrying him at 16 years old and moves to San Diego. And here she is, 17, pregnant, married to a drug addict, living in the ghettos of San Diego, and estranged from her family. And so she spent 2 years in that situation, and finally one day she knew she had enough because of the violence that was there and everything that was. So she calls her parents. She was the prodigal son. She came back, and they said, okay, you got 2 years to get your life together, and she went on a spiritual. At the time, and still to this day, there was a priest in the Catholic Church that worked with young people, and he had weekends called Discovery, and he would bring teenagers in, and the teenagers would have like a born again experience during this weekend, and they would just find themselves totally like just in his the way he had discussions and the way he built this program. The kids revealed their own troubles. They saw that God was real, that they were forgiven, and by the end of the weekend, they were like renewed, And so Renee came out of that weekend like a different person, And so she got her GED, and she got her driver's license. She's putting her life together. Now, here's what happened at this point. At Our Lady of Lourdes Medical Center, there was a nurse who was a nun who worked in the Camden community, and she knew the families. She worked for years with the people in Camden, and she says to Father Mike Mannion, who we just saw last night. He's still a part of our life. He says to Father Mike Mannion, she says, Mike, she says, I'm noticing that these beautiful children when they become teenagers, they're no longer coming home. And I would say, where's Felicia? Where's Jose? Where's so-and-so? I haven't seen her. And they go, we don't know. They don't come home. And so she said, can we develop a program that will help support these kids? So when they become teenagers, we keep reinforcing them, and we keep telling them that, and build their self-esteem. Because she knew that Father Mike had a great program for being able to do that, And she said, do you know any young people that could help me build this program? And he said, I got just the girl, right? I know exactly who can relate to these kids, right? So in comes Renee, 4 or 5 other kids from the program, and they spent a year developing a program where the kids came in off the streets. It was a 90-minute session. They called it the Bridge, and in this program they would have these, they called them labs, but they'd have a topic, and then they would break into breakout sessions, and they would teach the kids how to run their own breakout sessions. And so the kids that came in, they were I got involved 2 years into the program, but sometimes these children would come in, and let's face it, in the inner city, by the time you're 13 years old, you've probably been traumatized one way or another. Yeah. And they'd come in, not even be able to they'd lift their head and say their name. And Renee would say to them, I'm a real good judge of character. And I've been watching you, and I see a real leader in you. And I think you're a born leader. And I want you to help me lead the program. And we're going to be doing leadership training. And I want you to, and so even if the kid was not behaving or whatever, she would get them believing that they were leaders, and she'd give them the skill sets to run these groups. And so in any case, it evolved. And then she went over to Camden High, and she said, I'd like to do this in your high school. And they said, well, we'll give you some kids to work with and see what happens. And these kids' lives, like they were like she was like transforming these kids. Like they would give these, they would put, they shared with me one day, they said, we gave Renee the kids that were the most, the hardest kids in the school to control. And she said after 1 or 2 sessions, these kids were transformed. So they created a program at Camden High in 1982 called SOS, Save Our Students. And it was Renee's program that would go in there. And by 1985, she was working with 12,000 kids a year in group in the Camden school system, And so now here I come along, right? And I've been volunteering, with her, and I have the Big Brother thing going. I have the goal setting thing going. And so what I did was I decided that I was going to take her methodology of peer-to-peer collaboration. I was going to take my goal setting passion, because I felt that goal setting was the way that you could control the quality of your life, and it was the most important skill set you could have. And my public speaking experience from doing comedy, and I was going to just start teaching goal setting, right? And so I opened up on Kings Highway in Cherry Hill. I bought, and then I got a franchise from a company called Success Motivation Institute, and they had about a dozen college accredited courses on empowerment and success attitudes and time management, and I became one of their top distributors in the country. And then I broke off and started to create my own materials, and I created this program called that Dynamics of Personal Empowerment, and I did that for 30 years, and I did it in the school systems too. In 1986, I taught the entire senior class of Camden High School goal setting in 1986. You know, and so now, and Renee, and then that little girl that was born in San Diego, she's our daughter, and she grew up in the program because she was 3 years old when Renee started the program, and when she was 6, 7, 8, she'd come on Tuesday nights because she would just participate, you know. And she was like running groups at 8, 9 years old, you know. And her name's Maria. She's 47 years old, and Renee and Maria are both certified trauma certified. In fact, Maria actually teaches the trauma certification, you know. And so they now, after for 40 years straight, they had the Bridge program, drop-in program every Tuesday night, except for holidays, for 40 years straight. They have hundreds of those 90-minute workshops that they've developed over the years, all in modules,
Okay.
right? And they created a manual years ago to teach other youth groups how to start their own Bridge program. You know, and they started over 100 youth groups over the years. In fact, the programs like Urban Promise, Lucy, HopeWorks, they all came to Renee first and said, "Can you help us start a program?" You know, and so now what's happening now is that I have spent the last 2 years taking all of these materials from here and putting them up on achievementdynamics.com, and it's a core goal setting system with workshops that can be customized to each person's situation. You know, so it's kind of like going to the gym, and then, you know, there's a piece of equipment over there that you need to work on. Well, that piece of equipment in my program could be a workshop on procrastination. You see, that other piece of could be a workshop on time management or decision making or whatever, right? And then Renee and Maria, they are now an LLC, and so that's called Youth Achievement. And what I'm in the process of launching right now, the key to the program is collaboration, and it just so happens that I'll be able to send you this email, this article about I'd say about 6 weeks ago. An article came across my newsfeed, and it says how behavior change works. Right. Well, here in 1985, this was my first workshop, and it said Seeds for Growth, and it says dedicated to motivating people to their full potential by combining proven methods with the Word of God. So all of the methodologies in the program are spiritually correct, and they're also psychologically correct. And in developing this program, I always knew that if you wanted to achieve your goals, it relied on you becoming the person that's capable of achieving that goal. You can't just write down goals. You can't just learn information. It's about becoming. So down here it says, what you are is God's gift to you, and who you become is your gift to God, right? So what it has now developed is a program that we say it's self-mastery through goal achievement. And it's really led, you see, people, it's led by the imagination. It's led by people getting an understanding that God's greatest creation is the human mind. And you can teach this in a scientific way, or you can teach this in a spiritual way, or you can do it both ways, you see. And once you enlighten people of the power of our mind, and that we are created in God, and we'll say it in the spiritual way, we're created in God's image, and God is the creator, so we're co-creators, you know. And so to empower people, you got to get them to start using their imagination, and no matter what grade you are, to have a wish and want list, to have a list of your dreams, because this creates hope, and hope is the opposite of despair, you know. And you keep the mind going in that direction, you know. And then as you have goals on a weekly basis, what you're doing is you're tweaking your ability to achieve those goals. You see, so you're working on yourself constantly. And this article that I got about a month ago that says how behavior change works is written by a neuroscientist that her and her team spent 30 years studying why training and goal setting doesn't work. And they figured out that there's a part of the brain, you'll find this, see, the fact that you're in the fields that you're in, you know, and you say, well, I'm giving you kind of like some of the details, right, along the way, right? Because I feel that we meet on a educational basis, on a spiritual basis, and on a sense of passion and mission, right? So I don't mean to fire hose you, but I'm getting to the end of my story pretty soon, all right? So anyway, so now what it is that there's a small part of the brain. It's called the hedibula. It's the size of a pea. And if we get training and we don't apply the training, even though we have good intentions to apply that training, we trigger the hedibula. And this tells us to stop trying. This tells us we can't do it. And we have to be able to skip over the hedibula and always be looking at progress, not win-lose. And especially when people spend, over the years, I've seen people spend $2,000-$3,000 for a weekend with some power guy, you know, whether it be Tony Robbins, and they come back, and for a week they could, you know, feel like they can walk on water, right? And then after that, they're more depressed than before because it didn't work, right? You know, so in any case, so in my program, it's really just a week-to-week measurement of progress, and every week you're just looking to become a little more effective, to get a little more growth, to achieve certain things, but you never fail because you're either learning or you're achieving, and then you reset it up, and you reset up the system for next week. But the important thing is that you have some kind of an accountability partner. And an accountability partner could be other people that have similar goals. So I'm building these communities. Just this week, we plugged in an app called School, SKOOL.com, and it gives us the ability to create a community just for people who, I have a curriculum on how to multiply business leads, right? So a good majority of my clientele have been business people that want to improve their sales, you know, whether it be salespeople or business owners, right? So that's going to be one community. Another community is family empowerment, where over the years, my clients have said to me, hey, Mar, you know, how can I teach this to my kids, man? This is like good stuff. And I would show them, you know, that you create an action plan. Here's if I have one here. You got it, here you go. That everyone in the family has an action planner with each area of your life. In each area, you have your dreams and you have your goals. And then every week after dinner, everybody talks about what their goals are for next week and how they made out last week. And you get that going in their brain at that young age. And so that's family empowerment, right? And all the workshops that I developed, I'm supplying the lesson plans. So each community can be working with each other and they can empower one another. You know, so it's kind of, in fact, the one of the slogans that's on the site is, feel the current, be the light, pass on the power. You know, so it's people empowering one another. And it goes back with when, you know, Jesus said when two or more are gathered, right? So you really, empowerment's a team sport. You know, you really got to have partners, you know, in your journey, you know, type of thing. And in the Youth Achievia section, if you go to the site, the section says Youth Achievia. What I'm doing is I'm bringing in like Urban Promise, and I worked with the teachers and counselors there are working with me. There's a program in West Philadelphia called We Love Philly. They work with inner city youth that have been traumatized in one way or another. They're in the program. I'm adding more youth programs. I talked to a lady today, just became a principal of a middle school, and she's interested in being a part of it. So I want to create this Youth Achievia hub where youth programs are collaborating, and they have the materials, and we're taking all the lesson plans that I created over the years, and we're adapting them for each age group, you know, and I'm on the board of Big Brothers, and I'm hoping to bring big brothers in, and everyone that's a big can have their own community, and they can learn how to mentor their littles, you know, with their goals, you know, because just because you're big and you passed all the vetting, it takes months to be vetted now as a big brother. It doesn't mean that you know how to be a mentor. You know,
Right.
it's, I mean, you can be a friend, but being a friend and being a mentor is like another level. It's not, everything. So anyway, so um, in your in Tanya, so Tanya knows that an organization like your church has a lot of people that are already believers in and that in doing God's will for their life. It's like, it's like you folks are already empowered.
Yes.
It's just a matter of having more tools. And I would love to be able to work with you, with your youth program. I would love to be able to plug your church in. Your church could have its own community, where you're empowering one another. And I tell everyone, look, once you understand what my system is, and it's made to be transferable, it's simplified. It's life that's complicated. This decomplicates it. It gets it all sorted out, and all you're going to do is focus on 1 week at a time, so you're not overwhelmed. And when you get a sense of achievement, it builds your sense of self-esteem and self-worth, and it gives you a little more strength for the next achievement. And so we say, as you build your goals build you. As you're going for the golden egg, you become the goose that lays the golden eggs. I've in the '80s I had 40 real estate offices as clients. I had 50 chiropractor offices as clients. It didn't matter where I went because the system works no matter what you apply to it. And so anyway, so I'm excited when you told me your story and you told me your background from counselor to educator to empowering youth to business people. I'm sorry, I got excited, and I couldn't wait to tell you my story because I feel that somehow God's plugging everybody in, to see how we can work together. And my ultimate goal is I would hope by January I can create a 501c3, whereas an annual membership to Achievement Dynamics is $595, and that's what I charged in 1985 when I opened up on Keys Highway in Cherry Hill. So what I charged 40 years ago is what I'm charging now, right? And now at the same time, I want to take that membership fee and I want to turn it into a nonprofit, and I want to support youth programs around the world that are plugged into Achievement Dynamics, because for two things. One is to support the program for sustainability, but also the youth that have their goals. It's important that we support them financially with their goals, not just spiritually and emotionally, but financially, because I know I'm preaching to the choir, but let's face it, how many young girls don't go to gymnastics because they can't afford it, right? That the parents can't afford to send them to gymnastics. How many? Just a few weeks ago, I saw an article on TV that said only 6% of baseball players now are black because the colleges are recruiting out of travel teams. And when you're a talented baseball player and suddenly your parents have to come up with $6,000 a year so you can be on a travel team, that disqualifies them, right? So their career ends right there. I want to be able that they can submit their proposal, whatever it is, and we can support them. You know what I'm saying? And I'm 67, Renee's 65. We want to spend the rest of our life just making this bigger. And my goal is that in a year or two to have 10,000 members. Everyone's putting in $600. That's $6 million a year that we have to bring back to the community. You know what I'm saying? So at this point, we are at the very precipice of launching this thing and building the communities, starting with the business community, the family empowerment community, and the youth empowerment community. Those are the first three communities that I'm looking to launch. As I sit here today, knowing that next week we open up the communities and start loading in the members, and I start teaching. I have to teach. My job is to teach everyone how to teach themselves, how to teach each other, and do that. So anyway. That's where I am, and I feel very blessed to be talking to the two of you today because I just feel that the two of you understand everything I just said.
Well, definitely, like mentorship. I mean, in the school system. Well, I'm actually actively in a mentor program for our church. I went through a training. We have an LCD training that our bishop recommends for us, and as you go to different levels, I was a mentee. I'm still a mentee. Always probably be a mentee. But now I'm mentoring. I was also mentoring in the school, which I didn't want to do because of the time constraint. But as you said, people that knew me, because I coached football for 15 years, and I know a lot of the families in Camden because we went to school in Camden as well. So I was asked to mentor students in the school, and as you said, they give you the worst ones. They give you the ones with the behavior issues and stuff. But we made a lot of progress. So I was doing that, and I was meeting them on my prep period. That was the only time I could really meet with them.
Mm-hmm.
And but it was a lot of progress made. I just the mentoring aspect from itself. Like I should tell even my students, because I had a lot of LDM students. They were learning disabled students, or they were BD, behavioral disorder students. And I said, tell them, just because you hear the word, you have an IEP, or you hear the words, you're in self-contained, because all of our kids, 6th, 7th, and 8th, were all in the same class. That's how they would do it. It's called self-contained. And I was like, special education just doesn't mean don't worry about that. Whether you have difficulty reading, difficulty doing math, difficulty articulating, yourselves, remembering things, you don't have a routine. So it was all of one thing I did was establish a routine. When they comfortable with a routine, they know what to do. And you said something that was very similar to what I said. I didn't, you celebrate the wins. I should tell my kids to celebrate the failures, because at the time when we started out, whatever level you're on, you couldn't even identify the word cat or dog. But by the time a few weeks later, you're recognizing that. You might spell it wrong, something, but look where you were, at least you know what that word is. You can see it visually, tell me what that word is. Now we're going to work on the spelling part. And like you said, it's celebrating those things, because when kids see that they can actually accomplish something, it's infected. It's contagious.
Yeah.
And I did the peer leader thing as well. What I would always try to empower students to teach each other. So whenever a student would get things down, you were my helper for a week, and I would always alternate, and I would pay them $5 real. That was their salary, And I was like, but the rules. You're at school every day. No behavior issues, and my kids really took it serious, because every week it was a different student leader in our classroom. They took that with pride. So those are things that we actually was like, just from where we were, the biggest hurdle I've seen now, and I'm talking about these are middle school kids that I was working with, is they feel 8th grade is it. They're not looking to go to that next stage. And I said, like, but they have big dreams. They see these things on TV and stuff like that, but you need you need to be proficient in high school level to do a lot of jobs. So if you don't have that, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage, because you have kids basically dropping out in the 8th grade, just pregnant. I had a student, she graduated and was pregnant within like a few weeks after that. And so I'm trying to show them. So we went to the school and spoke with the kids, because I tell everyone, not everyone's college material. Sometimes you go to college at a later date. There's nothing wrong with that. I did it. You said you went to Camden County as well. I did the same thing with the Camden County.
I took a year off, and then
It all comes with time, because until you learn those skills to be able to apply yourself to do the work, you're going to be frustrated. So we had a seminar where we were speaking on real estate, but we were trying to show them how there are jobs out there where you can earn 6 figures without going to college. And a lot of them have talent, like doing hair and stuff like that. They make a lot of money now. I said, but there is schooling involved. So you have to be able to do the basics. It's never going to change. Reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's never going to change. No one's asking you to do quantum physics or anything like that. But you should be able to know 1 + 1 is 2. 2 - 1 is 1. And that's how we try to teach it for them. And a lot of times I notice with the students, every teacher has their own style of working, and students today, young people today, you got to meet them where they are.
Yep.
And if you don't, once you meet them where they are, and like when kids, my students didn't even believe that I was from Camden. They were like, "You're not from Camden, Mister M." And I said, "What do you mean I'm not from Camden? Like, who would lie about that?" And they go, "Well, you don't act like you're from Camden." I said, "Well, what does Camden act like? What does it look like to you?" They was just like, "Well, I don't know." But I said, so then when I would start breaking down my story, I told them how I was homeless, in high school. So I grew up. I didn't know where I was going to lay my head at when I was in school, and and they're looking at me, and I was telling them where I lived at, and and they're just like they're amazed by it. They're like, "So you really understand?" I see, I understand what it's like not having electricity in the home. I understand what it's like not being able to wash your clothes. And when you can relate to them on that level, and it's not they see but they're like, well, how did you get here? So that's the next part of the story. And what I know, like the biggest hurdle whenever I wanted to work with students and I would do things with students was getting the parents to get on board, because that was the orders. It was always either an excuse. You said like meeting once a week. I noticed in camp we had an after school program, which was fortunate. I even had I started a gaming program. My principal asked me to start a gaming program, and I said these kids spend way too much time playing video games as it is. So I said I won't do it unless these are the rules. And I said it has to be over 95% attendance, no disciplinary issues. They had to be caught up with all their work with their teachers. I went to all the teachers of the kids that were in there. And I called the gaming program, the conversation is the key to the game. So, and the kids were like, they think they're going to play PlayStation and stuff. And I had that stuff in there, but I said, we're going old school with it. I said, first of all, we're going to unplug, put the phones up. So, card games, Uno, we had a pool table in there, Monopoly, Connect Four, stuff like that. These kids had never even really played these games before. And they got to the point they were conversing with each other. Before, they started talking. Then they were like, they just stopped playing the video games altogether. Every day, oh, Mr. M, we're having an Uno tournament. Or Mr. M, I taught kids how to do math, but teach them how to play blackjack. Weren't gambling or anything. And the kids, students didn't realize they were doing addition until we were done the game. And they're like, wow. And I said, look at what you can do now. You just got to apply yourself. They got to want to do it. So I love what you said, everything you said, because generationally it changes. Just the things that these kids are exposed to, they think they know everything now. And they think the answer is always in that cell phone, and it's not. And I said it's a practical application to what we're trying to teach you. And even if you apply, you're not going to get it right all the time. But again, there's no judgment, because that's why we're here to pick you up. When you get frustrated, we're there to affirm you, and we're going to keep pushing. And I tell them all the time, like, I can't count all the times I failed at something, and I said, but you have to keep pushing. It's how you react when you fall down is how you're going to be successful. If you just fold up, then, life's going to pass you by. So I know my wife definitely probably agrees with a lot of that. And she's very, like, especially with the young ladies, I know it's a different, like, a lot of the young ladies that I taught at school, I could tell they were yearning, they were all yearning for fatherhood, because a lot of fathers weren't there. And it was amazing how just having a conversation, they would come to school, Mr. L, let me tell you what happened yesterday. I'm like, what happened? They tell me their story, and they're just happy to have someone listening to them, talking to them. And it goes a long way. So it's a give and take with the mentoring, that you have to be willing to do. And I when my wife, when we talked about, going further, working with the youth, and I thought, because it's you got to be willing to sacrifice your time. And if you're not willing to sacrifice your time, because you can't do it, to go through the motions, you're vested in it. And, whether they take it and run with it, or sometimes, like you said, they fall, by the wayside where they don't pick it up, but you still got to keep pushing. And it's a mindset that you have to have as a mentor, teaching a program like yours and stuff. It's it has to become your passion, and if it's not your passion for it, then it changes. So
Yeah,
mhm.
yeah, and Salama, so what's your thoughts on this too? Like, what are you thinking?
I think a lot of what you said is basically how we think and some of the things that we're looking to model our program around is definitely about mindset, because you have to be the person that's capable of taking those action steps. You have to believe that it's possible. In order for you to be able to stick with something, you got to visualize the goal and know
Hmm.
that it's achievable, or else
Yeah,
you get become discouraged because you're gonna fail initially. And a lot of times, I know, at least for me, in my past, I've been more of a perfectionist, where I overanalyze and I think about things and
Yeah,
overthink
you see
about
me
it
shaking my head.
to the
okay,
point I don't take any action, and that becomes a form of procrastination. So,
yeah,
you know, having experienced so many different things that cause us to have setbacks or not to make any progress towards our goals, it kind of built this drive within us so that we are able to be impactful in the lives of other people. And, being able to develop that framework and have the tools to be able to help people to think differently and to see that change is possible, that there is a better light at the end of the tunnel. You don't have to remain in your current present state. You can move on and grow and achieve some of those things that you may have believed was impossible. You never seen it in your family. You may not have seen it in the people around you. It may not be behavior that's modeled, and you have to have structure and support around it. And we would be that support that they need, that accountability that they need, people that they can bounce back with. Okay, this is the area where I'm struggling. How can you help me to overcome this barrier?
hmm, yep. Everything you said is so spot on. And the approach that you've taken. You know, again, what Renee has developed was very much intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
What I developed was intuitive. Much of what you have shared has been intuitive. Have you seen, and as you see what works and what doesn't work, and we're all on the same page.
Right.
And just like this lady who's 30 years of being a neuroscientist. It's like she's got the science behind what we have discovered.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Type of thing. You know, and you were saying too, Asanta, that you coached football for 15 years.
Yeah, coached both
Wow,
my
where at?
boys, and when they got, you know, when they got to that level where they were going to high school, kind of, I said, look, now you're in new hands. I coached a lot of kids, and it was it was funny because one of my colleagues, I didn't even, she was doing some paperwork for me when I was transferring out of the school system, and she was like, you don't remember? She's, you don't remember me? And I was like, no. She was like, you coached my son at St. Pete's from the time he was 4 all the way till he was. I was like, really? And she told me, so I was like, wow, this is a small world. And our youngest is 23 now, so
Oh wow.
they played football together. She was just like, yeah. She's like, you made such an impression on him, and I was like, oh, it's funny how time goes by. It's just
Yeah.
like I said, whatever fits in. Like it doesn't. A lot of these kids, like I don't understand, like the stuff they're into, like the anime and stuff. I don't understand that stuff. I don't get it. I'm a Star Wars guy, so it's like my kids are like, that's corny. Like we don't want to watch Star Wars and stuff. So, but it's amazing. We did a debate one year. My class, self-contained. I was teaching a lesson on. It was on Egypt, and one of the students saw a symbol and said, "Oh, that's an Illuminati symbol, Mr. M." And I said, "So what?" She said, "It's an Illuminati symbol." I said, "What do you know about the Illuminati?" Everything she told me was basically what she saw on YouTube and stuff like that.
Huh?
So we're going, and I was like, I said, no. I said, you got a lot of, so you got to know where your sources are coming from. So then the other kids wanted to chime in, and they didn't know how to converse. They would always start yelling over each other and everything. I said, you know what we're going to do? I said, we're going to have a debate. And they're like, what's a debate? And I said, I'm going to teach you guys how to have a discussion. We're going to have the pros and the cons. But I said, we're going to make it interesting. I said, you guys say the Illuminati is an evil organization. That's going to be your argument. I'll take the con. I'm going to have to prove that it wasn't, right? So we taught the students how, I was teaching them how to do proper research. All they know how to do on the Chromebooks is go to YouTube, this and that and everything. That's all they know. I was teaching. I said no. Then they go into Wikipedia. I said no. We got to do real research. Was teaching them how to research, and a lot of them, again, it was they had difficulty reading the stuff. So we taken note cards. We broke it all down. I gave them all my arguments, and at the time I had 4 kids. It was just 4 kids in my class, and I said all of you are going to debate me. So, and the goal is you got to beat me. So we were doing this. That was going to be their grade for the semester, which was, and they would come to school excited, like, oh, can we go to the library? Can we do this? So then our principal got wind of it, and she says, you're really teaching them how to debate? I said, yeah, because usually they start cursing at each other. I said, anytime you can hear a 12-year-old say, my esteemed colleague here, I was like, that, I said, that made me smile. So then she came and watched, and then she was like, wow, like, they're really doing this. So she asked us to do it in the library, and she brought other classes down there to witness them, to see it. And, again, our kids, they have that stigma, special education. But she brought the inclusion class, the general ed classes down, the 7th and 8th graders, and they were amazed. And they did so well. I had them at the podium, so they didn't realize they were learning research skills. They were learning public speaking, and it was so.
That's cool.
It was so and one student's mother just cried. She was like, "He's never even read a book, and how is he up here talking these things?" And we practiced and we rehearsed, and the goal was their bet. They wanted to bet me was if they beat me. All they wanted was Chick-fil-A. I said, really? All you guys just work for nuggets and stuff? That's all they want. Chick-fil-A. I said, sure, if you beat me. I said, but you're not going to beat me. And we had such a great time. And it was and our principal and our guidance counselors there, and even the other teachers, they were like, how did you get them to do this? And I said, you got to meet them, again, just meet them where they're at, because they showed interest in that. And then you pour all those other things into it. And they wanted to do that all the time. It was always, and they started doing papers. Like, my students could sit down and just do research. They knew how to research properly. They knew how to write out their notes. And these were all kids that had IEPs. They were learning disabled, but they knew they learned that, and they never forgot it. So it is just a matter of, and kids were impressed with them. They wanted to start a debate club. It was like, it was something different they never saw before. They never experienced it. And they took it and they made it their own. One student was like, when he beat me, he was like, Mr. M, because I beat you, I want your tie. I said, sure, take the tie. I said, I got tons of ties. And I was like, do you know how to tie it? He was like, no. I said, so now I got to teach you how to tie the tie. But it was stuff like that the kids need. And
That's beautiful.
Yeah, so you have to be there with them. Get in the trenches with them. That's what I tell everybody. Don't be afraid, to get in the trenches with the kids. So.
Yeah. And meeting the kids where they are. Renee's program, when for 40 years, the kids would come in just off the streets. There was never a sign-in sheet. They never offered food. They didn't offer trips. They didn't offer anything, but there was a bottle of water and a paper cup, and that's all you got while you were there. But they offered listening. They offered a structure. And when the kids came in, Renee always said, the youth is run by the youth. So the youth was the welcoming. The youth would welcome the youth coming in. And then at the same time, when they sat, and they would all sit in a circle, and if it wouldn't be unusual for someone's first time there, they'd be in a hoodie, and the hood would be over their head, and it would be their, and they would go, and it would be their turn, and they'd be like an icebreaker, and Renee would put no pressure on it, and she would, would say, Hassan, would you like to share? Okay, we can come back to you, no pressure whatsoever, and and it's amazing how soon the hood would come off. Like maybe not the first day, maybe the second time they were there, the third time they were there. And before you knew it, they were sharing, and before you knew it, they were in the leadership program. But Renee would never. She would just, wherever they were, even if they just communicated with a grunt or wouldn't say anything, Renee would say, "Okay, we can come back to you." And there was never. And it's amazing how these kids would just respond to that, and from that, and the patience. I always called her the teen whisperer, because she can reach kids. And then we started to get kids that were coming that were autistic, and they had they were getting no traction with their therapist, and they would come to the bridge, and they would suddenly open up. Because it was such a safe place, and they become leaders. And there's so many beautiful stories about who works for the TD Bank now, who does this, and the parents say, boy, until they came to the bridge, nobody could even talk to them, and now they're driving cars, they got girlfriends, they got bank accounts, and whatever. So there's something about, and Renee teaches that, and you already have the skills. Both of you already have the skills. I always say that whatever I've created, when I teach someone else what I already know and the structure once you know it, guess what? You can do it better than me because you have what I know and you have what you know. And I always believe that, when I was 24 years old, I started going to the bridge, right? And I would welcome the kids and whatever. About 10 years ago, Renee would say, Mar, I can't have you standing at the door anymore when the kids come because you're going to scare them off. So I kind of aged out, of the welcoming committee, because they see an old white guy standing there. They're like, I ain't going in there, right? So in any case, but the cool part about it is what we're in Achievement Dynamics, having these communities, everyone can be learning from each other where they have that instant bond, because I don't care if it's people that are business people. I don't care if it's women in transition. There's going to be a group just for women in transition. There'll be an LGBT community, whatever it takes, wherever we meet people, and it's and because what, as much as we're all different, we're all the same. That there's a sameness, with all of us, and so, when I would have my workshops I was doing 200 workshops a year at my office by 1988 or 89. I'd have 2 in the morning, and I had one at lunchtime. I had 2 in the evening, different nights. I was doing 5 a week. You add 50 weeks a year. I was knocking them out, and I was doing stuff in corporations and stuff. So I got to kind of hone in my skill set. And now with the workshops that are on, and I'm gonna give you the access codes to get into the site. As if you join. You know what I mean? Like I'm full transparency here. You can go in and poke around, and then I want to do a Zoom with you where I can kind of show you, that you can kind of see what's in there, and then I can give you more of the methodology behind it. What I'm doing now is I'm creating videos, these little 5-10 minute videos that can explain each of the segments, so you don't just see it. You kind of hear me explain it because there's some nuances that I learned that I can share. But passing that on to people like yourself, and you people being able to share with other people who are youth empowerers, we'll call them, and then having this formula that we can just keep, back in the 80s when I was struggling to survive, and I've had many times like that because I was always doing something that's never been done before. I was always, like in 1985, who taught goal setting? No, it took me 2 months to get my first client. I would tell people about it, sit at their kitchen table, and they would look at me like I had 2 heads. And so one day I went to the Chamber of Commerce, and I joined the Cherry Hill Chamber, and I stood up and I said, I teach goal setting. And next thing I know, everybody that had a business was following me back to my office because they understood what I was doing. And so, and now that I'm doing this, where it's not about somebody getting a coaching certificate because they spent they spent $2,000 and spent, 26 hours in their training program. Now they can coach other people on how to run their life and charge them $200 an hour. It's like, it's not the way it works. You know what I'm saying? It's more of understanding the principles and utilizing the principles and being able to, go to the gym. It's the same. If someone can understand that the principles for fitness are universal no matter who you are. When you stretch muscles, they grow. When you work your cardio, you get stronger. When you have muscle resistance, you're going to get stronger muscles, right? So anyway, all these principles are universal. But when you go into a gym, there's one thing they want to know: what are your goals? Because if all three of us joined the gym, all three of us would have different goals. We want to, 6 months from now, what's our goal, right? At the same time, what's your current physical condition in relationship to your goals? So now they take our physical, they all do a fitness evaluation, they know your goals, and your program is not based on your strengths, but based on your weaknesses. And over a period, week to week, you're in a rotation where you're slowly iterating your program to strengthen the weaker parts of your body, because it's a holistic